All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to our Math and Computer Science alumni panel this morning. This morning we have 3 alumni with us. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your time and expertise with us. We have Katie Lawson, who is a 2009 graduate, Sarah McGinnis, who's a 2013 graduate, and Chris Fernandez, who is a 2020 graduate. And we've asked them to come this morning and share a little bit about their time at Maryville College and how that led them to where they are today, and field questions from you guys that you have about their journey. So we'll give each panelist a chance to talk for a few minutes about their experiences here at Maryville College and how that led them to where they are today. And then we'll open up for questions from you guys. So panelists, anyone want to start us off, or should I pick somebody?
I mean, I guess I'm the oldest one, so I'll go first.
Okay, Katie, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I came to Maryville in 2005, and when I first came in as a freshman, I was actually a pre-med major, and then I got into chemistry, and that was a big fat fail. So at the time, I was like, well, I was in calculus, and Dr. Siopsis just put a note in my mailbox and was like, hey, you're actually pretty good at this. You should consider being a math major. And so I was like, okay. And so I did that. And at the time, really the only thing for math majors to do was to also be teachers. It was kind of more limited. So I did the Math for Teacher licensure program up until second semester of my junior year, and I did my student teaching, and I decided I hated it. So then I was like, well, what do I do? So I kind of scrambled and got the rest of the recs that I needed to just graduate with it with a degree in math. But during my senior study, I always found like medical applications and like medical questions to be the ones that interest me the most, and like anything in homeworks that had to do with medicine, I always found those to be the most exciting and the ones that I enjoyed doing the most. So I did some research, like where does math and medicine sort of intersect, and that's where I landed on biostatistics, which is what I am today. So after I graduated from Maryville, I went to UNC Chapel Hill, and I got my master's in biostatistics. And I'm now a senior biostatistician too at a small contract research organization in Durham, where I basically help use my knowledge of statistics and math to help pharmaceutical companies and biotechs, get their drugs and products to market. So that's me.
Thank you. Sorry,
Sure,
I was having trouble unmuting myself. Sarah, yeah, if you're willing to go next, thank you.
I'll go next. Yes. So I came to Maryville in 2009. I actually knew I wanted to be a math major. I loved math in high school, did really well, and so I kind of always knew. Took Calc 1, loved it, decided yes, that's exactly what I want to do. I also didn't really know much about what else I wanted to do besides teaching. So I kind of graduated with a math, and my original thought was I wanted to continue on my education. Like I developed this big love of learning, and we were in all different subjects of math. We took 1 or 2 courses in all the different areas, and my love of learning just kind of continued there. And so I went to Appalachian State for my master's, and again, had every intention of teaching at the community college level because that allowed me to continue my love of learning of math. And I really enjoyed being able to share that knowledge with people. And so I went on, have a MA in math from Appalachian State with an emphasis in community college teaching. I graduated in December, took a semester off, and so that was a little difficult to find a full-time teaching job kind of in the middle of a semester. And so I started saying, okay, well, what else can I do? Like, what are my other options? Because I can always teach, I can always come back to that. And I happened to see a government posting for the U.S. Census Bureau as a statistician, and I was not a big fan of stats when I was at Maryville College, but when I went to App State and started taking some other classes and seeing real world examples of it, how do we use it in everyday life? How do we apply it to what we do now, and how can I make an impact in the world with what I know? And so that kind of I became a lot more interested in that, and that was something I wanted to pursue. So I actually applied, and that is still what I'm doing today. I am a mathematical statistician for the U.S. Census Bureau, and I do work on the 2020 census. So we are in production world right now. It's very weird to be virtual production world where we're all at home. But yeah, so I explicitly do kind of answering the question of accuracy on the census. So say we collect it and we get all these numbers, but then the question is, did you really count everyone, right? Like who did we miss? Where did we undercount? Where did we overcount? And so my area explicitly works on that. So we do our own sample, we take our own, basically a mini census of it, and we match it back and forth. We send people out in the field. And so we're trying to use our knowledge and our stats background to back up what we do, what the census produces. So.
Thank you, Sarah. I think you didn't like stats as much because you didn't have me as your stats teacher when you were at Maryville College.
I did not have you, yes.
I'm just joking. Chris, can you say a few things for us about your time here at Maryville College and how that led you to Jewelry TV?
Yeah, so I started at Maryville College. I knew I wanted to be a math major. I loved math. I loved doing the work, so I decided that's what I was going to do, just because I wanted to do something I enjoyed in college. And then I think it was my sophomore year, I ended up taking, because you have to take the computer science classes through the math curriculum at Maryville. And then from that, I really started to realize the connection between math and computer sciences. And with that, I decided that I was going to add on a computer science minor at first, and then after taking more computer science classes, I ended up really enjoying computer science. But I didn't want to just drop the math part, because math is what was really helping me throughout my computer science classes. It was the problem solving that I loved. It was all the different things that were coming together from my math classes that helped me in computer science to learn how to really find solutions to the problems that we're working on and the projects that were given to us through those classes. And then after my junior year, I did an internship at Jewelry Television that I got, that I just kind of happened upon, and I ended up absolutely loving it. And I was a software engineer intern there for the summer between my junior and senior year. And I absolutely loved it. I had a great time doing it, and even though it was, I was working with brand new stuff that I had never done before. Maryville College it was between the math and computer science classes. For the most part, Maryville College had truly prepared me to get in there and to learn what was going on. And then from that, I decided that I wanted to do some sort of software development or software engineering and go down that route. So I spent my senior year trying to figure out where I wanted to work and how I wanted to go about, whether I was going to go get my master's degree right away or what I was going to do. And through that process, I ended up my senior year, I worked part-time for Western Express out in Nashville, and I did some mobile development for them, which was a completely different type of development than I did at JTV through my internship. And I realized that no matter what type of development I was doing, I was always learning new things, and I was always getting to use what I had learned to solve different sorts of problems and create new things. So from that, I realized that I was no matter what job I did in this area, I was always going to continue to learn. And that was the most important thing to me, because that's what I was trying to decide between on when graduation came, is whether I was going to go get my master's degree or whether I was going to go straight into the job, straight into the workforce, because I loved learning and I loved education, and it was always an important part of, and that's what I loved most about college, was getting to learn throughout the whole process. So I was worried, but through the software engineering, and still learning every single day, and every day is basically something new, and no matter what project comes along, it's always something to be learned. And through that, I realized that this is what I really enjoy doing. And just because I'm working a job now instead of going to get my master's degree or whatever, I still get to continue that process of learning, which was the most important thing to me. And that's how I ended up at Jory Television. So through my internship, I kept a close connection with the people at JTV, and ended up going through the interview process during the last weeks of college, and starting to work there immediately, I think 2 weeks after I graduated back in May. And I've been there since. So, and I'm still really enjoying it. Every day is a new experience, especially with everything going on right now and working from home. So it's been great so far, and it's been a great decision that I decided to go do this instead of go do my master's, and that was the better path for me.
Well, thank you everybody for sharing about your journey a little bit. Students, we'd like to open things up to questions you might have. So there's a couple ways we can do this. You can post questions in the chat, and Alicia and I will monitor there, and we can make sure we try to address any of those. Or if you'd like to unmute yourself and just share a question, if there's no one else speaking at the moment, you are welcome to do that as well. So give you guys a moment to ask any questions we have for the panel.
I have a question, Dr. Russ.
Yeah.
So a few of you talked a lot about continuing education throughout your professional life. And so I'm just wondering if that's something that's really important to you, which is continuing your education. Do you guys have opportunities, let's say, as opposed to just learning something new on the job, if there's a class or something that you are interested in taking that can help in your professional life, do you have the opportunity from your employer to take a class or, do something that will help your education and help your profession? And is that accommodated through your schedule? Is it paid for by your employer? What are the chances to actually go into a class that will help you in your professional life, and how is that accommodated during your work life?
Sure, I'll go first. So the Census Bureau is great for that, actually, because we use SAS. So best example is we use SAS, computer programming, and I didn't really know SAS before I started working there. We did R in grad school, and I knew like a little bit here and there, but I didn't know any SAS, and they immediately dropped us in classes, like paid for by the Census Bureau, dropped us in a class, and then we got hands-on experience, like practicing that. But there are certainly, as long as like they offer all sorts of classes, like if you're interested in something or it's going to better your career or help you out in your job, they're more than willing to offer it, pay for it. I know some people have gone back and gotten like a master's degree even while they're working to help with that. So as long as, there's justification and there's, a reason for it to help you in your job. But yeah, they certainly want to foster that learning and wanting you to continue to grow and expand your knowledge, and do a very good job of helping any way they can with that.
Yeah, I'll second that. So I was on the opposite end in grad school. I used SAS all the time, and I didn't know a lot of R. I still don't really, but there were parts of SAS I knew, but there were other parts I didn't know. And so when I first started at Roe, there was at my company, there was a subset of us who didn't know SQL at all. and there were some things we really needed it for. And so they sent 3 or 4 of us to SAS, because SAS's campus is here in North Carolina. I live in Raleigh, and SAS's campus is very close to me. And so we went actually to SAS and took a class there from their experts for like 3 or 4 days just to learn SQL. And the same sort of thing happens when, professional development is always really encouraged to keep learning. You can have 5 years of experience, or you can have 1 year of experience 5 times. And in my position, it's the 5 years of experience that makes a bigger difference. And so they encourage you to go to conferences and learn new things. And sometimes at conferences, what they'll do is they'll hold classes before, maybe a day or 2 before the conference. So say you want to learn a new analysis technique that no one at your company really knows very well, or it's just a new release in a software. Sometimes they'll hold those classes, and yeah, my company will completely, I think most companies would pay for that and pay for you to go there to learn that. And then the expectation is you bring that knowledge back and you teach other people.
Yeah, definitely. And just from I've only been with JTV now for 6 months, but I've heard and people go to conferences and everything, and JTV's funded that. And because, they always want to, especially in software development and software engineering, there's always the new bright shiny technology that needs to be learned, and through that I know people go to conferences to see if it's something viable that they can bring back for the rest of the company to learn.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. It sounds a lot like, hopefully, if you're learning to love learning here at Maryville College, that's something you'll be able to continue on with as you carry forward in your jobs. More questions for us? Anybody want to speak up, or feel free to post them in the chat as we go along?
Suppose I have a question.
Yeah, Jordan.
I'm trying, thinking how to word this. I suppose what I'm wanting to know is, how does your job role at your job help your coworkers? Would they find purpose with theirs?
So Jordan, you're trying to ask about, could you try to say that again for us?
What part of your job helps your coworkers find meaning for theirs?
Okay, so yeah, it's about connecting with coworkers and helping each other kind of find meaning in the work you're doing. Anybody speak to that?
Yeah, so I've been at Roe for 9 years now, and it's where I started working right after I graduated from with my master's. And so I've been there long enough to be mentored by people that I very much so respect. And I am now in a position where I've been there long enough and know enough that I now have the opportunity to mentor others. And so I take a lot of pride and invest a lot of time in helping what we call more junior level statisticians. So people who are just out of grad school, and you've only been in the company for a year or 2, kind of find their way in the work that they enjoy doing. Just like it happened to me. Like as soon as I graduated, I was assigned to a mentor, and she really helped me find my path and the sort of work that I enjoy. And so, now that I'm in that position, I'm doing the same thing. And so that's how I would say I fill that role.
On the team, so I'm on the opposite end. Since I only started half a year ago, I'm on a team with people who have been at the company for, I think the longest person on my team has been there since 2005. So they've been there forever, and I'm getting to learn all these great things for them, and they're getting to pass all their knowledge on to me for everything that they've learned through the process. So through that, and then hopefully if I'm still here and if I'm still at this company in 15 years, hopefully I'll be able to do that same sort of thing.
Yeah, so this kind of works out because I'm, in the middle of that. I've been at Census for almost 5 years now. And it's the same thing. It's a lot of team building and a lot of knowledge sharing across the board. And when I came on, I was, given a supervisor and a mentor. And I was also given a coworker who had been there like a year, somebody who's still new, but knows enough to be able to kind of help you navigate those random questions that are even like, how do I get around the building? Or, if you don't want to ask somebody else, but like we do a very good job of fostering team learning and team building and knowledge sharing. And so any and everything you learn, you share that with your team. And so we do a lot of like big like team meetings where we discuss and we talk about things. And so we try and build that kind of connection with your coworkers and that knowledge share. And you then in turn, like it has always been the expectation that whatever you learn, you share with somebody else to help us all kind of, that's how we're successful, especially during a big production census year. Like we have to be sharing knowledge. We don't have time for everybody to learn it on their own. We send one person, the team, everybody goes one direction, and then you come back and you knowledge share. And it allows you to grow and allows you to gain confidence in what you know. Like you become the expert essentially on something. And that happened to me year 2. Like they gave me a project and we're like, okay, you go learn, you go to all these meetings and you come back and share it. And so it allows you to learn how to, again, continuing your learning how to learn, because now you've got to come back and share it with your team. And so, yeah, it's a lot of team building.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, Jordan, and panelists. It sure sounds like some good opportunities to work in teams and get some good mentoring and start doing some of that mentoring yourself, which is wonderful. More questions for our panelists?
I have a question. So what skill sets that you learned at Maryville College kind of prepared you for the workplace, and what are you using the most out of your college degree?
So at least for me, the technical skills I learned at Maryville College. I mean, we learned C in my C++ in my first few classes. Now I work mainly in Java at JTV, but those technical skills, like the process of learning a new coding language and everything like that has been passed on. But the biggest thing for me is Maryville College, everything is thrown at you all at once and you have to learn all this new stuff. I mean, it was the exact same thing when I joined the company. It's tons of stuff being thrown at you. And for me, it was the learning how to learn and how to learn fast and how to learn properly, and not just kind of throwing things to the side and saying, oh, I can figure out how to do that later, because when it comes time to produce, you need to do it the correct way. So it was the process of learning how to learn. For me, that's been the most. Yes, I got I got technical skills from Maryville College. I learned how to program, which is, since I'm a software engineer, that's what I do every day. So that's a big deal. But it was a completely different language. It was completely doing things in the business world is completely different than when you're doing stuff in your class. And it was the entire thing. And it was the entire process of figuring out how to get things done and figuring out how to get them done right is what Maryville College probably taught me the most.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. My logical thinking and critical thinking skills that I learned at Maryville are some of the biggest things that I use every day in my career, because again, like you can learn the technical stuff on the job. You can learn that pretty quickly, and you don't necessarily need to know everything, because I certainly didn't. I didn't know a whole lot, but my quick critical thinking and logical thinking, and again, like learning how to learn and knowing how to absorb all of this information and process it in the most efficient way so that I can get my feet wet, and not being afraid to fail, really, not being afraid to do things wrong. Like that's the quickest way to learn, and Maryville definitely helped me with that. They threw you were thrown in and you had to figure it out, and but it was also in a safe space where you could fail and it would be all right. And you learned from it and you didn't make that mistake again. And so I jumped in and I had to learn fast and I had to learn quick, but I also had confidence in my ability to critical think and logically think and be able to figure it out and not be afraid to fail and not be afraid to try. And so all of that definitely came from my time at Marable.
Yeah, I would agree with the both of you very much so. And I'll take a slightly different stance. So while I was at Maryville, I was a math major. And so let's be real for a second. Being a math major is not easy. It's a mental toughness that you kind of have to get used to. And I think sometimes in the workplace, like they said, sometimes you're jumped into something and you need to figure it out. That takes a little bit of mental toughness. And I think being a math major in general helps you with that. So I was a math major. I was on the soccer team, like Chris. And I sang in the choir and in Off Kilter. So I had like 800 commitments going on at the same time. And so learning how to time manage and communicate with people who needed different things from me at different points in time was a real critical skill that I didn't have before I came there. And I think it's something that served me really, really well in my work. And then lastly, writing skills. So I write a lot. And I've written a few manuscripts. I've helped write a few manuscripts that have been published, and just writing, I write a lot of documents. And so and Maryville's, writing departments are tough. And they set you up with a really good skill set that's going to help you if you're doing technical writing or if you're doing, any other sort of writing. So I think those are the three biggest things that I along with, the love of learning, I think we've been over a lot. But I think kind of more like off the beaten path sort of things that Maryville has helped me out with my career a lot.
So can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Sure.
So, sometimes when our students go for interviews, and this is for all three panelists, for internships or jobs, they're going to be asked about specific experience, specific skills. How do you handle the question? How would you recommend handling a question where you may not have that specific experience with a software package or a certain methodology, but that you can learn it on the job? Because all of you have said much of what you've learned, you had to learn on the job, but that Maryville gave you the problem solving or analytical thinking skills to do that. How would you handle a question like that in an interview?
I actually had a question like that in the interview for the job that I'm at now. They asked me, they're like, have you ever heard of, like this, at the time, I didn't know what it was, like a proportional odds model, and do you know how to use it? And I was like, yeah, no, I don't. But I'm a really good learner, and as soon as I hang up with you, I'm going to look that up immediately, and I'm going to figure out what it is. So you're not expected to know everything off the bat, and I think other people get that too, but I think most of the time what they're doing and fishing for are for people to be like, no, I don't know what that is, but I'll figure it out, would be my advice.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely happened to me with with all the interviews I've done for job promotions at Census. They have all asked me questions and most of the time they know I don't know. Like, they're asking specifically because they want to know how I'm going to answer this question. And just like Katie said, I'm the same. I'm like, nope, don't know that. But here's what I do know that's somewhat related to it. And here's what I also know as well, which is that I'm a very quick learner. I want to learn. I'm eager to do it. And I will put in the time and effort into learning that. And so a lot of times they're just looking for that ambition, really, is kind of like the point of those questions, is to look for kind of ambition. And I certainly, I have a BA and an MA in math, and I'm a statistician. So I get asked that question all the time, which is, well, you don't necessarily have you don't have all the math skills or statistics skills that other people at your position or your level have. And how did you get to there? And it is because I know enough, and I also know I know what I can take and I know where to go to learn that material that I need. So I would say don't be afraid to say, no, you don't know that in an interview, but spin it in a way that says, let me show you where my ambition is and how hard I'm going to try to learn that to succeed at it.
Yeah, and I always had when going into interviews, I was aware that was going to be a question, especially since going in at an entry-level position in software engineering. That was a question I got a lot in interviews, and I always had concrete examples. From the upper level math and computer science classes, you have homework and projects that you have to do that you don't know how to do. You have to figure it out, and then it was the same with my thesis. It was more of a senior project. My senior project, I challenged myself to learn a brand new language to write it in because it was the best for that. And I had those concrete examples to say, hey, look, I, in 6 months, went from knowing nothing about this to figuring out how to produce something from it.
Thank you, everybody. Further questions for us?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So we're told a lot at Maryville that networking is one of the best things that you can possibly do to ensure that you have a place somewhere with your skill set. So how did networking help you to get where you are now?
Oh man, that's a great question. I'm personally not a massive fan of networking. Like when you go to conferences and you have to go to the happy hour and talk to other people. But in terms of networking within my own company, I think the biggest thing that's kind of helped me there is being willing to help out other people when they need help with something. And being like, if somebody has a question and they're like, I'm not exactly sure how to do this, and you do know how to do that, jump in there immediately. It doesn't, and sometimes these questions come from people who have way more experience than you. And if you have that knowledge, go ahead and jump in and help out. Like that's weirdly like my best example of networking. But I think just being a personable in general, and just don't have like a work persona and a different outside persona. Like who I am and who I'm talking to you right now is how I talk to my coworkers, and it's how I talk to my best friends. Like it's just being your authentic self, I think, is probably the best way to network.
Yeah, I guess I would piggyback on that. I'm also not a very good example of networking to get my job because I, again, wanted to teach community college, and now I'm a statistician for the Census Bureau. So how I kind of just honestly kind of landed in my job. But I have done a lot of networking since I got there. And have essentially kind of the same thing, made sure that like if there's an opportunity to learn something, you jump in and you go and talk to those people who know more than you about it. And then you can bring that back. And now I am, there's a lot of skill sets that I have now. And there are a lot of times that I'm sent to meetings because I know the people in the meeting and I've already made those connections. And it's going to be an easier, smoother knowledge sharing kind of situation if they send me because I'm already known. And so that's kind of how I've that's how I've worked hard with networking, is to make sure that like who I am and the work I do and how can I make that known in the Census Bureau? There are 5,000 employees at the Census Bureau. So how am I going to stand out, or how am I going to be able to get a promotion and be able to move up in the company, in the Census Bureau? Like that is all networking. And that is how I ended up in a promotion that I got, was because I started talking to people and I made connections and I figured out, what are the skill sets that I need, or how can I help, further make me stand out to other people. And so I think jumping at any opportunity to talk with people who've been at the company or been wherever for a lot longer than you have, and also recognizing where you aren't necessarily as like your skill set is weaker, and working on trying to grow that skill set as well.
I'd say with networking, it's always important to just make connections with people in general, no matter what, because you never know who knows someone at a company that you want to work at, or who's related to someone at a company you're going to work at, or which one of your professors has the perfect spot for you. I know both internships I worked with came from friends that I knew that knew people at the company, or professors that helped me get a spot at the company because they knew me, they knew someone at the company, and that connection happened. You never know what the connection is going to be, but it's always important that you're making connections with people and that you're showing and that people know you as someone who works hard and everything like that, because you never know who's going to be able to help you find a spot at where you want to be.
Thank you, panelists. Yeah, that was a great question. And I think those are some really good examples of networking. We often think about it as a way to kind of reach out beyond where you're at, but seeing that networking even at your own, within your own space is really important as well and valuable. So great. Further questions for our panelists?
Yeah, I have a question. Are you guys doing initially what you plan to with your degree? Because I sort of have this idea of where I have about like 2 different fields I want to go into the computer science industry, and I'm always worried that if I specialize in one of these fields, then I'm kind of narrowing myself to what the broader part of the industry is, and maybe I can't get into something like maybe being a data scientist or something like that instead of a software developer.
Sure, I will answer this question because I absolutely in no way, shape, or form am doing anything I thought I would do at my time in Maryville. I actually, to be honest, I left Maryville College thinking I don't ever want to do anything in stats and I don't ever want to computer program. And what are the 2 things I do in my day job that I absolutely love? Stats and computer programming. So I would say for sure, having some idea of what you want to do is great. Like that's kind of how I pursued, that's how I pursued grad school. That's how I, pursued my life. But then I said, okay, but hold on, I'm not going to discount other things because education and learning in the classroom is one thing, but applying that in the real workforce is something totally different. And so I continue to keep my options open. And when I applied for the job, the stats job at the Census Bureau, I went up there, had an interview, and I was like, yes, this is nothing like I've learned in class. And this is something I'm actually very interested in, and it's something I really want to do. And I love it today. So I would say that it's important to know what you want to do and to kind of gear towards that, but always keep an open mind and recognize that sometimes how you apply what you've learned in the classroom in the real life, in the real world, don't necessarily, it didn't connect for me. I didn't make that connection, and I didn't realize just how much I would love applying stats in the real world. And, and so I would say for sure, just definitely keep your options open. It's not limiting. Just because you specialize in something, it's certainly not limiting you at all. And I would be the first person to tell you, because that's what I did. I went down the math route and then all of a sudden started taking these stats classes and started looking at stats jobs, and now I have a stats job. So.
And I
think, Sarah, you didn't ever have any applied stats, maybe intro stats while you were here. Is that right? So your experience with stats was probability, which is the kind of the more theoretical mathematical foundation of.
Yep, I took the intro stats, and I think I took, we had to take probability and statistics, like 1 semester of it to graduate. I literally took only the classes I had to take to graduate for stats, and I stayed far away from it, and now it's my favorite thing that I do, so.
And I'd say especially in the tech field, if you want to be a software developer, I mean, people bounce around from software developers to data analysts to product managers to QA people all the time. So I'd say going into a field, in any math field really, that people love people who can do math and people who can do computer science, because if you can take those skills and apply them to so many different things. So I would not say that it's going to limit you if you pick one specific route, especially if you're open to learning afterwards.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. And like I was just like Sarah, like I took the minimal amount of stat classes that I needed to graduate with my math degree, and now my title has statistics in it, and like it's literally what I do all day. I would say the only thing in my experience with the people that I've worked with, the only thing that can minorly be limiting is, and for all of those people with PhDs, please earmuffs. In my field, people who have PhDs are actually more limited than people who have master's degrees, because a lot of times they get kind of pigeonholed into doing really specific projects and really specific areas and certain types of analyses because that's what they have their PhDs in. While master students, or even, I mean, you don't even have to have a master's, bachelor students are more like a jack of all trades sort of thing. They can pick up and adapt and learn a lot of things. I guess not the PhD people can't learn things easily, but so yeah, I would never think of what you're doing to be limiting. Like you start going down one path and maybe you end up somewhere else. Like don't think if I don't learn this right now, I'm never going to learn it, or, those are, yeah, that would be for me.
Yeah, I think I can see what you're saying about the PhDs, how you've invested so much in that one area that's kind of the expectation that you use that expertise as much as you can, or other people haven't built that same expertise, so you're the one who does that kind of thing. But that's very interesting. Thank you, panelists, for some good insight there, and David for the question. We're getting a little bit closer to the end, maybe about 5 or 6 minutes left. Do we have further questions for our panel?
I have another question, if I may.
Yeah, Jonathan.
I know a lot of times whenever I have a project or something like that, if I can see the ramifications of my project afterwards, like I see, the good effects of what I've just worked on, that really means a lot to me after I've completed something that I've worked really hard on. And I was just wondering, I guess, Katie, most to you, because you've had the most time working on projects and getting to see those effects. But have you gotten any personal testimonies from, I don't know, people that have like seen your work, or like, given you that gratification of something you've worked really hard on and now they're reaping the benefits of this thing that you've put out into the world, or anyone?
Yeah, so I probably, the project that I'm the most proud of that I've ever worked on was called the LEAP study, LEAP, Learning Early About Peanut Allergy. And it was a study that showed that if you give kids peanuts early on in their development, in like small increments, they're more likely to outgrow their allergy, which is huge because peanuts are everywhere. They're literally in everything. And I mean, these are kids who, if they had just a little bit of dust on their skin, would go into anaphylactic shock. And so the fact that I got a chance to work on that research for 6 or 7 years, and to see the testimonials of people who came back and were like, now my kid doesn't have to be afraid to go out and eat in public, like that's huge. And that's why I truly love the field that I'm in now, is that, working in public health, you get to see directly the products that you work on affect and improve people's health and quality of life. So I agree with you. I mean, like that's the big reason why I fell in love with the field that I'm in. And so, yeah, I have had a few chances to see those, really beautiful testimonials from people whose lives have been better directly because of the work that I've done.
Sarah or Chris, anything that strikes you here with this question?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like, kind of I'm in the middle of what will probably be my biggest project and the biggest thing that I can't wait to stamp my name on. And so, but there are certainly smaller things that, like smaller projects and things that we've kind of gone over and like working towards, like, and so I was in a position where I got to kind of essentially oversee and be the kind of lead person on building on kind of our liaison with our software developer for a matching software that we have currently in production right now. And so I jumped in head first, became the subject matter expert in it. And I know everything there is to know about this software and how it works and what happens when it breaks, because it inevitably will break. When you are in real life production, things break. And so how do you fix it? How do you jump on your feet? And people are coming to me every day. They're like, hey, Sarah, this happened today. Can you go in and fix this? So I think, for me, that's probably the biggest and most exciting piece of that, is that I'm still the project's still happening, but people are recognizing me and knowing that I'm the expertise here and that I know how to communicate to the software developer how to fix this problem. And so again, at the end of the day, when all of this is done, like it'll be awesome, to do that. But yeah, certainly I'm getting compliments, and I think a lot of times too, them asking you to do something else or saying, because you did a good job here. They may not ever say because you did a good job, but it is, hey, here's an extra project, or here's another assignment. Can you take the lead on this? Can you go talk to this person and come back to me and let me know what you learned? Is validation of who you are in the workforce, and like they can trust you to go gather information and come back, or take the lead on something and come back and do a good job at that. So I think that's kind of where I see it.
Yeah, and I'd say, even though I haven't worked on any huge projects by any means yet, just because of the period of time I've been at the company, but I mean, when creating something that someone else uses, no matter how big or small it is something that I really enjoy, and I think it's really cool. Because in college, I remember that I would like work on a project, show it to my friends, and then be like, oh, cool. But seeing something that you make and you created be used, I think it's one of my favorite parts of being a software engineer, is seeing something you made, something you had your hands on, and now it is being used. And I think that part is really cool.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you, panelists. And we have reached the end of our time for the panel. So everyone, let's give a big thank you to our panelists for giving us their time and their thoughtful responses. Katie and Chris and Sarah, we really appreciate you guys joining us this morning and helping us find out some things about your journey and time at Maryville College and think about how that might apply to us. So appreciate you joining us.
Anytime.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.